At the Home Depot, we make it easy to turn your to-do list into a done list with our speedy delivery options. Need something in a hurry? We offer next day and even same day delivery on a wide variety of products. The best part is you can order straight from your couch. Our team is ready to help and get your order to you same day if it's placed by 4 p.m. on select products. When shopping online, filter by delivery to see availability options. Delivery at the speed you need, only at the Home Depot.
We are back with the Falcons Audible, a special edition presented by AT&T. Just for those that are listening, or you may never ever capture what we ended up recording yesterday as our normal broadcast, our normal podcast, because there was some breaking news from the Atlanta Falcons organization. Something happened on Tuesday evening.
Oh, I know what it was. Arch shaved. That's what it was.
He cleaned up the beard.
Just the outside, but I don't know if he cleaned it up. But it just moved the outside. It's still our Miracle on 34th beard. That's what we need to get. We need to go to the playoffs.
So Arch was growing it out until the Falcons won a game, and then they won a game, and so he let go of 67% of it. But he's still holding on for hope for maybe another 24 hours. Yeah. But with some breaking news from the Atlanta Falcons organization, Raheem Morris names Michael Penix Jr. the starting quarterback moving forward. So, gentlemen, there's a lot of different areas, things that we can talk about with this discussion. There's always the internal, there's the we watch tape, there's the it's not all Kirk's fault, there's the yes, things needs to get better, but then there's always the other side. And this is the unique situation here is that, what do they always say, like the backup quarterback is one of the most popular guys on an NFL roster and any college or any college football roster, right? Backup quarterback is generally the most popular guy on the roster. Well, it's even more popular when the backup quarterback is a first-round pick in the 2024 draft. And so anytime there's some adversity, there's going to be people that are going to be like, well, how about the first-round pick? Why don't we put him in the game? Well, it takes until towards the end of the season, and if that was what you were wishing for, that's what you're going to get. So, Shock, let's start with you. Your initial reactions when you heard, we might have heard maybe about 3 minutes before everybody else heard, but your initial reactions when you heard that Raheem Morris made the switch to Michael Penix Jr.
I'll be honest, I initially said, wow, like, okay, it's really happening, because obviously the conversation has been broad, it's been talked about, and we've watched this team, just say for the last 5 weeks with the way they played. And initially you think, man, that is an interesting move. Obviously you're thinking, okay, you're coming off a game where you're playing against a team that's not so good, then you got a team that's coming up who's not so good. Maybe you give them another shot to try to figure it out. And plus, you're right in the middle of this playoff race. And so initially I was like, wow, there are a lot of things that you think about and say, this is interesting to happen. But then there's also, you look back on the way the games have transpired. You watch the way that, Kirk has played throughout those ball games. And it gives you a little sense of, especially guys who play the game, who understand what it's like and, how things should function. And then you watch the way the game was played last week. Then I started to think, it starts to make sense. Mm-hmm. And then for me, just watching the game last week, and watching the way the game was called, watching the way the Falcons' offense was functioning, it felt like it was more of a protection last week as opposed to, okay, let's open it up. And we've talked about it. Everybody watched the game. It's not anything that we're saying against, this offense or against Kirk or whatever it was. You knew going into that game, and then as the game went on, their offense wasn't going to score a lot of points. They wouldn't be able to move the football. It wasn't going to be one of those type of games where they were going to beat you. And in my eyes, just watching the game, in my personal opinion, just watching the game, it felt like let's not do anything to hurt ourselves to lose the ball game. Mm-hmm. And then you ask the question, does it surprise you? And then I think, well, once you start doing that, that's not a recipe for success. That doesn't feel good when it comes to how do I go forward in the season where I have to protect my offense or protect my quarterback from himself or from the team to keep us from losing a ball game, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So I think once I thought about it in that manner, I looked at it like, man, you know what? It makes sense now. You can't handicap your quarterback. You can't handicap your team. Mm-hmm. And in this moment with 3 games to go, with your team in the playoff hunt and race, you got to give yourself the best chance to win. And if you're handicapping your team, that's not the best chance to win, and then you make the move.
Arch, last weekend before the Raiders game, one of my keys to the game was cut it loose, okay, which basically just meant go out there, play free, and go out there and execute. And I would also say, like, offensively, when I say cut it loose, I mean, it's like put your foot on the gas, right? And to Shock's point, as we kind of like digested the game on Monday night, it didn't look like there was a put your foot on the gas mentality offensively. And then you couple that with, okay, just last 5 games, okay, scoring 17, 6, 13, 21, 15. Okay. What that tells me is you have such a small room for error if you're going to win football games when that's your offensive production. So I'm sure coaching staff, personnel department's not making the decision based off of that. They're making the decision based on the best interests of the team, and we need our offense to open up more. So, Arch, do you have the confidence? Is there enough of a track record? Did you see enough in preseason OTAs or going back to his days at Washington that leads you to believe that there's a chance that things could be opened up now?
Well, I think that's the only way you're gonna get where you want to get to.
Yeah.
I think that the reason you make this change is because that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You got to get back to who you were. I know Wes Durham and I were talking about this. Wes made this analogy. It's a good one. My broadcast partner on the radio, you got to get back to being who you were in October. But you're going to have to do it with a different guy behind center. There's so many things to unpack with this. I thought Shock touched on it perfectly. When you call a game and you're protecting yourself from your quarterback making a mistake in the game to cost you the game, then you got to do something.
Yeah.
Okay? They had not done that in the 4-game losing streak. You go back to the Minnesota game, Kirk made a number of good plays in the game. It's 21-21, guys, going to the fourth quarter. You got a chance to beat one of the teams got one of the best records in the national in the NFC on their in their building. You've played them to a standstill for 3 quarters, right? So that's where the hesitancy, and I know there's fans that say, oh, why didn't we make the switch 3 weeks ago or coming out of the bye week? But when you look at the games, yeah, there were some moments in the games that got sideways on, and you're scratching your head, why did he throw it there or whatever? But think about the other 52 minutes of the 60 minutes of the game that he made all these throws and made all these plays to put you in position to potentially win. We're talking about losing mainly 1-score games. But then when you step back away from it, and exactly the way Shock described it, couldn't have done it better. A perfect description of how you feel as a coaching staff. Wow, are we having to take stuff out of the game plan? Are we having to not call stuff because we're afraid we're going to make a mistake here? You can't win that. We can't play that way, okay? And there's also, this is the other piece to add to what Shock was saying, is the energy of the players. The players feel that, okay? If I'm a receiver and we're not throwing the ball, or I'm not sure we trust that, that affects me and affects the way I'm playing too. And so there's an energy piece to this. And Kirk is such an energy guy. And again, we're not ganging up on Kirk or anything like this, but this was something that Raheem felt like was the best interest of the team. They evaluated it over a 5-week period. This is not just a rash decision. And the energy of the football team and your opportunity here with 3 games to go is still there. So all of that factoring in, and now you got a young kid, and the question you asked, he threw 21 passes. He's thrown 21 passes in Atlanta Falcon. Okay. That's not a lot. I think he threw 16 in the preseason game against Miami. You liked some of the stuff you saw in the Miami game, but that's way back in August, right? He made a couple of throws against Denver. He cut one loose down the field. Wow, I like the way that looked. Casey didn't end up catching the football, but you like what he brings to the table. And there's so much to him, and I know we'll dive into him personally. So I'll get off my soapbox at this point, and we can talk about Penix. But that's kind of my take on where we were, kind of what led to this decision. And I think it's the right one for the energy of this football team, coupled with what Shock said. Completely laid it out perfectly. You can't call a game to not let your guy try to make plays at quarterback.
So we're a long ways from the majority of those pass attempts that you talked about from Michael Penix in the preseason. But we've had 14 games in 15 weeks where Michael Penix has not been thrust into action, where he's been able to be a student, okay? He's been able to be mentored by Kirk Cousins, to listen in the meetings, to learn from mistakes that have happened in previous games, to listen to how Kirk works through his progression, how he thinks about things mentally. Because say what you want from Kirk on the field this year, performance or lack thereof, I'm sure that Michael Penix has gotten a bachelor's degree in education over the past 15 weeks in football knowledge, okay? But I want to get back to your point about energy. In Shock, he was talking about the energy of the team with Kirk Cousins as the quarterback. Do you feel there's a good chance that there's an energy boost for the rest of the team, the players, defensive players, special teams players, the rest on the offense to say, we got the young fella in there? And they probably saw some things during practice this entire season where they're like, oh, yeah, I've been seeing what this dude can do all year long. Now we're going to get a chance to see him do it with live bullets.
And I think that's the other part of it that makes it interesting is a lot of people don't get a chance to see what happens out here on the grass during practice. Arch gets a chance to be out here a lot. I remember being out here in training camp and watching him throw it around. But what he does out here matters. And there are a lot of coaches who will not play a guy simply because they're not good practice players. Because you can't just go in the game and say you're going to turn it on. They obviously have seen things that they liked in practice. They've seen him, manage his offense. They see him, kind of operate in it within the practice. And you got to think about it. He's probably going against that one unit every single day. So he's seeing all their different looks as they get prepared for it. He's done the scout team stuff. And then we also got to remember, look, he's playing with Bijan Robinson. He's playing with Tyler Algier. He's playing with Kyle Pitts. He's playing with Drake London. How old are these dudes? They all around the same age. So guess what? That's a little bit different feel than obviously where Kirk is in his career. Not saying it's a bad thing or whatever it may be, but this is another young guy that's coming in with the same kind of aura and swagger that these guys have, and they've seen this dude throw it around. They've seen him play in practice. It's a reason why the Falcons said, you know what, Taylor Heineke, we appreciate you, but you can go somewhere else, because we've seen enough out of this guy that gives us the confidence that if he needs to play, that he can go in and play. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think the other part about it is we've talked about him being able to sit and be a student. And sitting behind Kirk for, since he got here when he first got drafted to now, there's so much knowledge that he can learn. I remember my rookie year coming in, sitting behind Michael Vick and Matt Schaub. Two dudes who have played a lot of football in the National Football League. You're talking about one guy who's the face of the league, and you can see how he prepares. And then you can see a guy like Matt Schaub, who was the ultimate cerebral guy who you could tell him the first part of play. He knew everything that was going on for everybody. And then, my next year, I get hurt. You got Byron Leftwich in here, who's played a lot of football, sitting in the room, seeing how he prepares. My next year, they draft Matt Ryan. He's sitting in that room. I'm watching how he prepares for the next 3 or 4 years. And it does so much for you to see how a guy goes about his process throughout a week and prepares himself and then takes it to the field and then see it in the game. It's a wonderful thing. And I remember also being on the sideline, even with those guys who have played a lot of football, still being able to give my 2 cents. And I think that's a big part of it too, is Michael Penix in game also seeing stuff and having the ability to say, you know what, Kurt, you know what else I saw? Here's X, Y, and Z. And I think that goes a long way as well. So to kind of wrap it up a little bit, this is a guy I think that has been put in position to succeed because he's had the ability to wait. He sat behind a guy who's done it. He's got other guys around him who's going to absolutely be excited for him. There will be a boost around him because of the guys similar to age, and sometimes that matters. And these guys will find a way to get it done. But I'm excited to see what he can do. But I know he's got it done in practice. And, Arch, I know you can speak to it even more, to the fact of what they've seen in him and the things they put him through. And, people don't know. He got the camera on his helmet in practice. He can hear Kirk talk in the huddle. They can see how he communicates with other guys. There's so many learning tools that they got out here during practice with the big boards. There's so many ways that they can find a way to get him better throughout practice that helps him be ready for this moment.
Arch, there's this point in the season, a lot of times when you make the move to a backup quarterback, it's generally because the season is lost, right? And it's, okay, we're going to give this guy the backup or the young guy or whatever the situation is, the backup. We're going to give him some experience as we close out the season. But there's not really a whole lot to play for. There's still plenty of things to play for. So quarterbacks inherently live with pressure, right?
Sure.
But does that not amp up the pressure a little bit more for Penix, knowing that if Atlanta's going to get to the postseason, they likely have to win out?
This guy is a different kind of cat now. I had a chance to talk to Mike a great deal during the season, in the preseason, of course, and then during the season, some of our travels and stuff like that. I asked him after the Dolphin game, which was his one preseason game he played. I think he was 9 of 16, made a couple of impressive throws, moved the team. I interviewed him after the game. I said, you probably remember. I said, Mike, you got your first game, and I remember my first game, and I know you do too. And you're thinking, were you nervous?
No.
He goes, I don't get nervous. It was, deadpan face.
Yeah.
I don't get nervous.
Yeah.
I was just excited, to get out there and lay it on the line with my guys, you know?
Yeah.
I said, okay, this guy a little different dude now. And so he played 48 games in college, okay? He played for 2 different teams. We know he finished his career in Washington and what he did, Heisman runner-up and all the kind of things he did at Washington. This guy is one of those guys from a college football standpoint that comes in much more prepared to play than some guys do. Mm-hmm. If you were going to compare him to some of his draft class, I think Caleb Williams is a really good player in Chicago and will continue to be that and is going to be that. He's had some rough patches, didn't play as much college football as this guy has. Mm-hmm. You go to like Brock Purdy. Think about how much football Brock Purdy played at Iowa State. That would be similar to what this guy's done. And this guy played in some big-time games, obviously the national championship game. But he's a different kind of dude in that regard. I think his relationships with the players is a good one, and Shock makes a great analogy. You're kind of on the same bar with them. All watched each other in college to a certain extent, know each other and all that. But there is going to be a learning curve here. This is a short week, remember. You're coming into a huge game against the Giants that you have to have, and he doesn't have as much as time as he spent on the practice field like Shock talked about. He hasn't been throwing to these guys all that much, okay? Yeah. And so the throws that you saw Kirk make, like down the pipe to Mooney where he made that catch right at the goal line and went in the end zone, you thought, there was nothing that would take you there on that read.
Right, yeah.
Michael probably doesn't make that throw. So now does he keep the ball out of harm's way? Let's hope so, Yeah. But there's still going to be a learning curve as to, okay, where do I throw the ball for Drake on jump balls? There's some stuff that Kirk has been kind of trying to learn about these guys for the first 14 weeks that Penix going to have to try to cram into 1 week and get ready, or cram in these last 3 weeks and try to win football games. So to think that this is just going to be a smooth transition and it's fantasy football, that's not the way it works. Now, we all think that Penix can walk in there, his arm. The thing that I love, and you tell me, Shock, now all of a sudden, what is the number one thing off of the stretch running game that's the counter off of the stretch running game?
Booting out the other way, baby.
Boot out the back. You haven't seen any of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and some of it has had to do with the limitations of movement with Kirk, but they supplemented it with some offset play action where he's offset and changes launch point like behind the tackle. Now all of a sudden, there's probably the possibility you're going to see the quarter out of the pocket. And remember, I'm not talking about, back in the early 2000s with Mike Vick out running, pump faking, and running 7 yards a time. But I am talking about the quarterback being able to move around a little bit, which kind of creates a problem defensively now. If I'm trying to prepare, I'm the Giants. And I look up and I go, I'm going to have to throw tape on a Penix playing in college. And maybe a little bit of that Miami preseason game to see if they used him that way. So there's an uncertainty for the Giants now to get ready to prepare for this
It's a great point. And DJ, I'm going to tee you back up here in a second, because now just think about with that simple play design that you're talking about, right? Stretch run, bootleg back off of it, play fake, right? Now your backside defensive end has something completely different to think about with Penix under center versus Kirk Cousins. Then, and I'm not even talking about a pass play here. Think about the backside cut lane for Bijan Robinson now with a defensive end that has to respect Penix coming out of the backside.
Down in there,
right? So think about now in the run game, there could be some more seams because you don't have a backside defensive end crashing down to cut off the backside cutback, right? So those are the kind of things that might be back into play here with Penix under center. Now, you talked about transition. I wanted to talk about 2 players. I want to talk about Jake Matthews and Caleb McGarry. And why are we throwing those guys' names out? Because we're switching from a right-handed to a left-handed quarterback. So I know you didn't play tackle, okay? But talk us through the changeup a little bit now with the backside being your right tackle instead of your traditional left side.
It's a little different. I think those guys will probably attack it the same way, and at the end of the day, you want to protect your quarterback. But there's a reason left tackles make a lot of money, and right tackles, they make a lot of money too.
Just not as much.
Just not as much because you gotta protect that dude on the backside. So yeah, it's going to be a different thought process, knowing, hey, now I got this guy's back as opposed to he can see everything in front of him. The one thing that I do like though, when you talk about Penix and you talk about some of the things that come with, obviously the protection and all that kind of stuff comes with it. And we talked about that Miami game. And I remember the one thing coming out of the Miami game, and I think me and Arch talked about it, and we couldn't stop smiling. And because the one thing we heard from day one when Raheem Morris got here was, I want a guy that's an elite processor. And I remember that Miami game, he gets in the game, he goes, boom, boom, comes back to that backside dig, and you're like, oh, my goodness. Did we just see that in game one?
Yeah.
And you talking about, okay, we said that's a long time ago, but imagine he was doing that in week one back then. He was doing that way back in the preseason, and now he's had all this time to continue to grow in that area of being an elite processor. I think that helps the protection. I think that helps your backside when it comes to Caleb McGarry now having to protect his backside because this guy's not going to hold on to the football. This guy understands that, okay, I hit my first hitch, the ball needs to go here. If it doesn't there, then I check it down or I find my other way to go. And I think we saw that early enough in his professional career in the preseason that this guy understands his offense already and knows where to go with the football. And he's had 14, 15 weeks to kind of master it even more while going against the number one defense, while getting more reps against the scout team. Now he gets a chance to put that into game action and see how it goes when it really matters. And Arch mentioned it. He made some big-time throws in the games that he, already played in. So I think this guy is going to show a lot of people exactly why he was a can't-miss guy for the Falcons, why they were so strong about and being so high on him. Going out to Washington, the whole brass out there, and it's, 30 to 30 mile per hour winds, and they sit and said, that's our dude right there. And I think that he's going to show a lot of people why they were excited about him and why these past few weeks have not been in vain, and he's absolutely attacked it as being you're one play away, but also you're always preparing like you're going to be the guy. And that's something that me and Arch know so much about is when you're the backup, you have to be ready and prepared because you never know when that time's come. And it was always ingrained in my head like, all right, you get your opportunity and you're not ready for it. The only person's fault is yours.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great opportunity for him to show, you know what? Yeah, there was a lot of talk about them taking me at number 8 and they just got a guy for $180 million. I won't play for another 3 years. Here we are,
First
year one, with everything on the line, and you got to be ready to go. So I think he'll be prepared and ready to go. Like Arch mentioned, he talked to him a lot. This guy, the mindset he has already, played a bunch of football, second in the high. I mean, this guy can understand the game, and he will pick up on it, and I expect him to go out and play well.
Arch, you mentioned that this is not necessarily going to be Michael Vick coming in there, and he's going to be running around. I don't think that's Michael Penix's game. I don't think he wants to be the running quarterback, but I definitely think he brings a different set of athleticism to that position.
I think he did.
No question.
What did he run, 4.4, 4.5 or something? I mean, the guy can do it now.
Yes, he can. He can. But to throw him in the same conversation as a left-handed quarterback like Michael Vick,
well, when you see a single digit and you see a left-handed guy, he's got a big arm like Mike did.
But the question that I wanted to talk about, or the area of the game that I wanted to talk about, is I can't help but think a week and a half ago when Falcons played against Minnesota on the road and Sam Darnold scrambles and there ends up being a wide-open receiver down the middle of the field, an area that Atlanta has not had, which is where you get a lot of explosive plays in the National Football League, is something called scramble drill, okay? And it's basically when your quarterback keeps a play alive and the defense has to pick, am I going to react to the quarterback? Am I going to stay plastered on the receiver? So now, Arch, I think about the potential things opening up when plays break down because of Michael Penix's ability to extend plays. Now, there might be more chances downfield to find Drake, to find Mooney, to find Ray McCloud. if he just scrambles out, keeps the play alive, keeps his eyes downfield, and cuts it loose. We know he's got that athletic ability and the arm talent to make some of those plays happen.
Absolutely, Rack, and you hit on a big point, and one of the reasons that he's probably in the game now. We talked a little bit about play calling and all that kind of stuff, but then all of a sudden here comes a different athleticism in the game. We talked about the bootleg game, and maybe that becomes part of what we're doing. If you go back and look at tape on Penix, as I studied tape, and I know you did too with the draft and stuff, when you looked at Penix when he played at Washington, there were subtle things that he did, even just in the tackle box, to create opportunities to throw the football. He had a talented core of receivers. I think, two of them got drafted, and the other guy's going to get drafted this year. But you're talking about a guy that would just subtly move and keep himself in a throwing position, and a lot of that is all you're looking for. Now, if you extend the play out of the pocket, certainly we've seen that happen against us. We've seen it happen with other players that we've had a chance to call their games, but. I think that the subtle movement in the pocket is going to be one. That's something that was a little disappointing that we hadn't been getting over the last couple of weeks. I think there's been, it kind of felt like you were stuck in a phone booth a little bit and you weren't moving. Yeah. Whereas just a step back slide. Now I'm in a perfect throwing position. I can stride in and let it go. You see how I use that left hand there? But I think that's something that Penix is going to be able to do. One thing I'd add, guys, is that. I got asked the question, okay, how much does the game plan change? How much you do all this kind of stuff? How much more time do you spend with Penix to get him ready to go? Shock talked about it. This is what he's been doing for the last 14 weeks to get ready to play, okay? I don't think you change anything other than he's going to get more reps in practice, obviously the bulk of the reps in practice, and there's going to be maybe an extra session with T.J. Yates, the quarterback coach, or maybe Zach Robinson on, okay, let's look at the game plan. What is it you like here? We repped this and this on Wednesday and Thursday. What do you like? What would you like to throw out? That happens with every quarterback. You and I both went through that kind of stuff. Yep. But I think you got to be cautious about overdoing it with him, because even though he's a different kind of cat, doesn't get nervous, he's going to sense that there's an anxiety with people around him if you're doing things differently.
Great point.
And I think you just go ahead and prepare him like you would normally prepare him. Trust that he's been preparing for 14 weeks, like Shock said. Yeah, you're going to spend a little extra time maybe going over the game plan or something like that, but that's it. I'm not going to plant any more in his head that, everybody's all nervous about me starting this game. Let him prepare the way he would normally prepare and let him go cut it loose, as you talked about.
That's right. Final question for you guys here this weekend. And I don't even know what the value is. Maybe it's a percentage, but I'm going to ask you, DJ, how much is the intrigue level of this game this weekend increased for you now?
I think the Ben should open the roof, because I think the roof is closed. That's not good enough. I think it's going to be excitement through and through. And regardless of who you're playing, I think people are excited. I'm excited to see him go and play. Obviously, he's been sitting, waiting, and you watch him throw. You watch some of the stuff he did in preseason, you watch stuff he's done in practice, and you're like, I want to see this dude when it's really live and ready to go. Yeah. And I think this is a great opportunity for him. And it's going to be fun, because I think – like you mentioned, you're going to get a chance to open this thing up. And one thing that he is known for is throwing the football vertically. Yeah. And I know the fan base is going to be excited to see the football go vertical. They're going to be excited to see the ball all over the yard. And I think he's one of those kind of guys that carries himself with that kind of swagger and demeanor that, you know what, I'm just going to go out here and rip it and see what happens. So I think they got to open the roof on Sunday for sure.
Arch has his boards in front of him.
Trying to get ready to go.
He's going to call the game from. By the way, you're going to need to switch your quarterback.
Well, I think you already put Penix down here, but I got all the notes on Penix. I've been waiting for this deal. I'm going to quote the great hockey coach, USA hockey coach Herb Brooks, when he said, "Play your game." Yeah. That's all you need to say to him. That's the last thing I'd slap him on the rear and say, "Hey, Michael, play your game."
So we're going to leave it at that. We're going to leave it at that, fellas.
First time he ripped one, Arch. I can't wait what you get.
I'm just telling you, again, no offense to Kirk Cousins. He did some great things, as Raheem Morris has mentioned throughout the course of the season, to get us to the point to where we're still in the playoff picture. But the intrigue level, to me, has increased a little bit for the game this weekend.
Absolutely.
And I wish the best for him, because you want a kid in his first opportunity in live bullets to go make an impression on his coaching staff, his fellow players, and to keep this team in the playoff hunt. So that was our quick not so quick breakdown because guess what? We could probably go for another hour, and there's not a whole lot on our rundown here. We just kind of go out here. That's just kind of how we do it. But hope you enjoyed a little bit of breakdown, a little bit of breaking news of Michael Penix Jr. being the starting quarterback moving forward for the Atlanta Falcons, and he will be under center, or shall I say behind center, in shotgun as it is so much these days in the National Football League for the Atlanta Falcons offense as they face off with the New York Giants this weekend, and we will see how it all plays out, and we will be back here next week to break it all down. Not only Michael Penix, but the rest of the entire roster, and hopefully recapping another victory for the Atlanta Falcons. So thanks so much for joining us here on the Falcons Audible, presented by AT&T, and as I said, we'll be back next week to break it all down. On behalf of Shock and Arch, I'm Rack. Take care, everybody.